Thanks, everybody, for coming to our first strategic planning of the council term. I think we have approximately 46 months left in this council term. So my hope is that we can spend some time figuring out how we're going to make the most of that as we circle up today. I appreciate each of you taking a few minutes and thinking about the legislative priorities that you have for the next 4 years, 46 months. And I'm excited for us to talk about it today because it's been really interesting to see some of the overlap that we have and to learn about things that are important to everybody. So I guess first of all, I'll go ahead and say, can I get a motion on the minutes?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of passing the minutes for strategic planning?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, good. We've got that squared away then. So to get us started today, in your packet, you have a list of values, and this is just one of these, thought-provoking kind of lists, not intended to be an exclusive list, but more of, here are all these different words that can allow us to sort of brainstorm. And you also have the ideas that our colleagues all sent in to Nicole with priorities that they have. So what I'd like us to talk through first is thinking about what kind of culture we want to have over the next 46 months as a council. And I'll be honest with you all, I'm very open-handed and open-minded about what this might turn out to be at the end of this conversation. I've thought about how something that I really appreciate about this council is the way that in the last 4 years we work together and we're very productive. And as a person that has served on other elected bodies, I was really grateful for the work environment that the council prior to the council historically has created. And so knowing that we had new folks on the team, I thought it would be good to have some conversation around that because we get to create the work environment that we have. Obviously, we are all here to serve our individual districts in Chattanooga as a whole, but the how of how we do that is the thing that can make a big difference in how enjoyable it is to come in and lift that weight on behalf of our constituents. So everybody has thought about that, I know, and some folks sent some ideas in. But if we could, I'd like just maybe kind of, I think they would call that popcorn. I've got a little marker up here. I'll just take some notes for everybody because sometimes it's nice to see something happening in real time. I was going to write on the marker board and then I realized we don't have a marker board anymore. So we won't write on the TV, but we have this snazzy thing. So as you guys think about like what kind of work environment we want to have, what kind of council, and also, another way we could think about this is what kind of values do we want to guide the work that we do on behalf of Chattanoogans, right? We talked a lot in our last council year about the sort of framework we might want to create to evaluate legislation. So if you have a value that you'd like us to consider like holding dear, just shout it out. We don't have to go around or anything, but I do want everybody to get to be heard if they so wish.
I'll say cordiality.
Ooh, now you're
How
making
you
me
spell
spell
that?
that. Okay, cordiality.
Way to start off.
What? Cordiality.
I gotta spell.
Or
That look right.
Oh, I didn't say I know how to spell it. I just know how to say it.
cordial.
Oh, it's a word.
Good. Rest is
Yeah,
good.
yeah. It's a word.
Okay, we're gonna
Being cordial.
cordiality.
Oh,
Okay. Do you want to expand on that at all?
See, y'all been pissed.
We weren't being cordial, I
Sorry,
apologize.
I apologize. We each have our own goals we have for our district, but I think it's important for us as a council to remain united and in accord with one another as best as possible every chance we get, and that's being respectful to the different things that we need, but also being intentional with each other about finding common ground and working together, and hopefully coming in understanding everybody has the best intentions.
intentional. So those read these. Okay.
Open-mindedness.
Ooh, okay. Say more.
There's a podcast. If you haven't listened to it, it's great. It's with Governor Bill Haslam and Governor Phil Bredesen. Thank you, Phil Bredesen. It's called "You Might Be Right," and it's the whole point is listening to one another, being open-minded, even though you might be on different sides of the aisle, different perspectives. But at the end of the day, you might be right.
Yeah.
So listening to one another and just being open-minded to consider that my opinion may not be or my idea might not be the best idea. Maybe ours together might be a better thing. So just being open-minded.
Okay, cool.
I'll add, kind of tack on to that, collaboration. And I see that twofold. It's what you were talking about, Cody, but also, where, just in thinking in terms of our priorities, I think that there's priorities that we all want for our district, so there's so much more strength in working together on a project versus, singularly working on something that might just benefit my district. And so figuring out what those 2 or 3 things are that we can work on collaboratively as a council that will benefit everybody. So it's within this room collaborating, and then also when we take it out
Yeah,
to the public.
great point. Madam Vice Chair, anything stand out for you?
No, they've actually hit on pretty much what I think I turned in. Was
Oh, yeah?
yeah.
Any words on that sheet that you're like, oh, that's a good one? On this little guy,
Which one?
this guy.
While
let me-
she's,
One of her words, collaboration is over.
while she's looking, I would say professionalism, and I think that's
Okay.
something
Yeah.
that ranks high on my list, with making sure that we are professional when we go about our business.
That stood out to me as a real difference maker when I joined this body. Just the level of like organization. It's very different than some of the other places I've served that will not be named. We all be dreaming.
That's what I was thinking.
Councilman Davis, you're a quiet fellow. What's a value to you?
Creativity, just in the way we approach
That's good.
problems, not being bound by what's happened in the past, but just thinking outside the box, I guess.
Okay.
Honesty would be one of the main things for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, well, that's this long.
Honesty.
That was
Yeah.
transparent, yeah. Yeah.
Anybody else have anything to add?
I do. Actually, one of the words I had was empathy, but I think I want to do a double whammy word, like a one and. I want to do empathy and grace.
And you don't just have to choose one. You could choose
Oh,
17
okay.
if you want. You just have, we're just chatting. Empathy and grace.
Yeah, I think sometimes when we're, working through tough policy issues, where we need to be open-minded, professional, and collaborative, we just have to realize we're still dealing with people. We have to give each other grace and use emotional intelligence and not respond in lack, but with empathy and grace. Meaning you never know where we're coming from, or we've had a bad day. So, if I say, Marvin, just know that I still love you, but I have to give you grace. 'Cause we're,
If I might add one thing.
yeah, so anyway.
Yeah, and also keep in mind when you want that grace, that you deliver it
That's right.
with grace. Okay? So then, it'll be all good.
Agreed.
Something I would add that I think goes along with these is curiosity. That's a value that I have in a lot of things of like, I think it kind of goes with the you might be right and the creativity of how might we do this differently, or what's the reality in another city, in another part of the community. Councilwoman Dotley, you've been quiet over there. Any value stand out to you, friend?
I would say just, I don't know how, it wouldn't be one word, just a reminder that we all colleagues. Like, we're colleagues at the end of the day. Everybody,
That's hard to spell
That would be
too.
more
It
like
is.
respect.
respect, yeah. We all got 50 plus 1, and we are here. Some a little,
Amen.
some a little more, some a little less. Everybody worked hard, and so, hey.
It looks like that was on a lot of ours. I see Cody Councilman Harvey, mine had mutual respect. So that's kind of like a common thread.
Especially when we disagree.
Yeah. So I feel like a lot of these make me think about how we want to work together. Is there anything that you feel like should especially be a guiding value as we think about a legislative agenda, or like the kind of policy we want to be looking at passing on behalf of the city?
Like what value goes into that?
Yeah, like if you were, like if we had a little checklist in our mind, or really, in reality of like, does this, I'll use an example of something I'm gonna be bringing to the council. It's a single stair ordinance. It's not sexy, it's not, but it's a tweak to a building code
Gotcha.
that for me, the reason I think it's important is because it could reduce the cost to build a multifamily building without sacrificing safety. And so you're able to get an additional unit in instead of having to have double stairwells. So if that were to come in front of this council, are there values we want to hold that up against? Almost like a razor of, okay, is this something that is fiscally responsible, or like, is that too bad? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud
Like
here.
what?
Like, do we want to have equity as part of our framework? Is this something that causes downstream maintenance costs? I don't know. Thinking out loud.
I think, I think like, in my thoughts, it's getting back to the core of why we're here. Our constituents elected us to make decisions based on what we know about our communities. I have District 7, I don't have a lot of insight into District 1 or District 5, I don't have a lot of insight into that, but knowing why I was elected, I'm elected to make decisions, and I think it's everything that we do requires us to do our due diligence, because that's what they elected us to do. It is our job to gather information, it is our job to make them informed, it is our job to make sure that when we vote yay or nay on something, that we have gathered all the information we need to make that decision, whether it's phone call, text, email, however we've communicated with the administration or any other stakeholders. It's our job to make sure that we have that information, and that we do our due diligence to make sure that we are making an informed decision that represents our district. And I think that is, when we think about like all the legislation and all the things we do, that is, we are here to vote. When we have our agenda session at the beginning, let's discuss it.
Yeah.
But when we get down to that business session, we are there to vote. That the people voted for you to get here and vote, make a decision and vote on their behalf. And so making sure that we are informed as much as possible to make sure that that decision reflects what our community told us they wanted when we canvassed, when we campaigned, when we did the forums, when we did all those things. And based on our city charter, state law, and things of that nature. So just making sure that we're aligning all the pieces together so that when our yay is yay, when our yay is yay, is yes, or is no, or is deferred, or whatever it is, that it's aligned with our community values and what's legal. So I would say.
With what's legal. She
Dun,
just said
dun,
something
dun.
really important just then.
Dun, dun.
Is that how it feels? I'll put it out there. It's, you know,
Okay, legal.
yeah, that's
You know,
important.
that's important.
Because we're the legislative branch.
That is, yeah, I mean,
That's our shit.
if we don't say it, sometimes we can forget it, that like, it's gotta be defendable, right?
Defendable, yeah.
Great point. Thank you, Councilwoman.
Can I add something to that? I think to, not really to that, but just when I think of all of these cordiality, open-mindedness, collaboration, professionalism, creativity, blah, blah, blah. I think about the word of what we are, and that's a council. And when you look up the definition, you know, how we make decisions, the word that comes, it's almost like a jury system where we have to be in solidarity. And it has to be cohesive. And I really, going to Cody's point, you know, a lot of us have different ideologies and approaches towards things. But I want to do my best to, when possible, to stand in solidarity with my council people. You know, when it may be a decision that does not impact District 5, and I was looking at Councilman Harvey's list, you got stuff that don't face your people in District 4, but you're thinking about the rest of us. I see that in your, which I'm shocked. I'm like, wow, he's already thinking about inner city, you know. And so I appreciate how we can really utilize that word council, and when we can, stand in solidarity with each other and be cohesive.
Like
So-
support, some level of trust. I was at, well, a meeting, weren't we all? I was at a meeting last week. And a gentleman was talking about wisdom, and he made the point that progress can only move as fast as trust. And that resonated with me, like the kind of trust that we need to build to be able to have, as
Yeah,
you're talking
solidarity.
about solidarity, that to Councilwoman Knowles' point about like approaching with grace, giving grace. That's interesting. Anything else anybody wants to add about like a framework of how you approach looking at legislation and what's good legislation, what's crummy legislation?
I think just a motto to look at, and I've used this with my teams at work, is a commitment or responsibility to a spirit of excellence. When I think about the city of Chattanooga, I see an excellent city. And I think to stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us in city government, we stand on that. And so I think we've got to have a commitment to a spirit of excellence.
You know, when I think about legislation and challenges that like when I sit something in front of me, I think, Councilwoman Dolly, your point about complete, due diligence, but like the actual, like there's the moment when I get to the vote, but there's also the work prior to get the legislation in front of my colleagues, like to know, have I answered, for me, have all the questions been answered related to this, like I'd like to see, I'd like to know that legislation has been vetted through stakeholders, for example. That was something that stood out to me about like the work that you did with Wreckers and how you had talked to so many people, like it came to us really well thought through. Like there had been a lot of due diligence before it came into the legislative council or committee. I forgot my word that I was just saying, but stakeholder input, that would be what it was. I mean, when Councilman Henderson set that process in motion for short-term vacation rental, we got a ton of stakeholder input that I think shaped the work that we did there before it ended up coming to council. Anything else anybody wants to add? Councilman Henderson, you've been here a lot of years. Do you have any guidance on what a good piece of legislation coming through, or tips that you have for how you approach writing it?
Well, I don't know so much about tips for writing it or good legislation, but I will say this, and one, this is kind of the flip side of it, I guess. There's no perfect legislation. And one thing that, he was an old state legislator, he said, if we got it wrong, we'll fix it. So don't let the perfect become the enemy of the good. I mean, sometimes, I've seen those saying, and I kinda like it, winners take imperfect action while losers are still perfecting the plan. You can develop something for so long that it never gets rolled out. Sometimes you just got to present it and as the best you can present it, and then there'll be tweaks. You mentioned the short-term vacation rental legislation. You know, we rolled it out, we made some changes to it, we tweaked it, and made it better. So sometimes the best you can do, you've gotta get it out there. And then, one of the things that we have done in the past, but particularly with, I don't know if you wanna call it controversial legislation, is put a sunset clause in there, or we'll review this in a year to make sure that we go back and review, you know, what were the hangups that we needed to address or have.
So almost like continuous improvement.
Oh, yeah.
This is iterative. I don't know what that looks like, but that's what it's supposed to be. Okay. Well, we will get all this in some kind of edible fashion for everybody to think about. Anything else we want to talk about related to values before we move on? Okay. Thank you all very much for your thoughtful feedback on that. Okay, so with those values in mind, and my hope would be that we'll kind of distill something that we can hang on to a little bit in the coming 46 months, but is what are the things that, you know, we've all been out on the campaign trail and hearing from our districts, and we all have things that are on our to-do list, and I don't know about y'all, but I've found that sometimes the things on my to-do list take a long time to get to done. Just this week, I moved a Post-it note on my board from Icebox to Finish that had been up there for 3 years, but I got the darn thing done.
Wow.
With that spirit, thank you all very much for providing priorities that you have for your work for the next 4 years. So what I'd love to do is go around the table and let every district representative please share the things that stand out to you. And as you're listening to everybody share, I think if you have some of those values in mind, that collaboration, you know, where's a place that you see, hey, I could connect a dot there. My hope would be that in the next few weeks we might identify a handful list of some big items we want to chew on, and then figure out how might we eat that elephant in small groups and then together. So, Councilman Harvey, you're right beside me. Would you mind starting, sir?
Sure.
We'll just go around the table if that's good with everybody.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So my first point, I put better policy regarding homelessness, and I saw that on a few others. You know, this is something that's been on my heart and mind for a long time. And I'll tell a story. We were in Washington D.C. back in the winter, and my wife and I passed somebody sleeping on the street, and they were just covered in blankets and things, and then it couldn't have been above 15 or 20 degrees. And I looked at my wife and I said, "We're in our nation's capital. That's unacceptable in the capital of the United States of America." Homelessness is such a challenging subject, and I don't claim to have the answer or solution to it, but it's something I want us all to take a hard look at. Like I said, being in the United States and especially here in Chattanooga, I think it's unacceptable for us to accept that somebody has to be homeless. there's many different things that contribute to that mental illness, drug addiction, things like that. So, I think that's where we can step in and look at some sort of solution to where we clothe you, we feed you, we help you transition into something better, to literally the American dream. But at the same time, you can't choose to be homeless on the streets just because you want to be homeless. So I think we create something to where it's just we don't accept that that's somebody's life, So anyway, that's something I want to look at. Government efficiency and fiscal responsibility, that was on the minds of a lot of my constituents was, how do they trust government to make better decisions with taxpayer money? And so that was one of the big things that I saw on the campaign trail, especially related to my third point, was funding the big three, I call them, police, fire, and infrastructure. Those were the big three items on my campaign trail. When I knocked doors, they said, we want safe neighborhoods, so police and fire, make sure they have what they need, and then infrastructure, they want paved roads. Paved roads, no more potholes, paved roads, paved roads, paved roads. That's all I heard, which is an important thing. So making sure that we spend our dollars wisely first on these big three things before we start looking at other things as well, which are also important. Crime, specifically related to gangs. I attended a meeting on the campaign trail with if y'all are familiar with the 423 chain breakers. So I'd never heard of them. It was a very interesting concept. So my wife and I attended that, and I thought this is really interesting, a different way to look at crime. But also, with them working with the police department, I don't think that is a replacement by any means. I think they've got to work with the police department. And so, for example, we had 2 shootings within like 2 weeks in my district, 5 minutes away from my house. So one was at a ball field, if y'all remember that, at Batter's Place, which was crazy, during a child's baseball game. I don't think that was related to gangs, but nonetheless. And then we had a drive-by shooting at the gas station just right before that. So, again, something I want to look at. Another thing I look at in Chattanooga is what is one of the things that makes us great, and it's our surroundings, right? This is a beautiful place to live, and I start to see some of the landscape and some of the beautiful icons starting to disappear, and I think there's a way we can look at that with some beautification and preserving some of those landmarks. Another thing that's been on my heart for a long time is economic development, especially in the inner city, where we make sure everyone, regardless of their status, has equal opportunity to live. And I said the American dream. And you'll hear me say that a lot, the American dream, but also the Chattanoogan dream. Just because you live in Avondale doesn't mean you can't have the same opportunities that somebody in East Brainerd does. And I want to make sure that happens, whether we look at promoting some more economic development in the inner city and attracting that to the inner city, attracting trade schools to the inner city, attracting different jobs to the inner city, where they have more opportunity to quite literally live the American dream. This was another thing I heard a lot on the campaign trail was zoning and development and the pace related to surrounding infrastructure, making sure our roads can handle what's coming. We're seeing a lot of that in the county area above mine, whose name shall not be named, and I do see some of that in my district as well. So making sure our infrastructure is ready, because we can't stop growth. We just can't. It's coming. People have the right to develop the land, so we need to make sure that things are in place. Code enforcement. Quickly, there's been several constituent issues I've gotten in just the last week or two where folks are not abiding by code, and how do we better enforce that? There's supposedly a family in one of the neighborhoods in District 4 that have a full commercial kitchen in their garage, and they can't have that. So, so we need to work on how do we enforce that. Yeah, exactly. I'm a UTC graduate, love the Mocs. I think looking at a strong relationship with them, I mean, they are integral to the city of Chattanooga. And I know, I've heard Mayor Kelly talk about a UTC research center, something that our city does not have. And somehow recruiting that, attracting that to our city. And then lastly, just a strong relationship with the chamber. I think they're integral to tying in with economic development, specifically in the inner city, of attracting those jobs and those companies that can help make that a dream come true.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Elliott.
Of course. Was a little bit shorter.
I deserve that. I didn't, are we supposed to go every?
You know, I think it's up to you if you
Okay,
want to share
I'm sorry, I
all,
just
or
went
you want to
through-
share
You
the
give me a
ones
hard
that
time.
are-
I know, I deserved
that are
it.
most important. And
I
we
deserved
can
it.
do- We can do another session of
Okay.
But we could do another strategic planning session.
Okay, all right.
It's important that everybody gets heard.
I think from mine is pretty concise. You know, infrastructure funding. You know, I think we have seen ourselves have a bump, and an administration that's been a little bit more intentional about increasing some of our infrastructure funding, but we don't know what happens in the future. It cannot be a priority of the next administration, but I know it's a priority for my community. So how do you maintain that? But how also do you make sure you sustain it and make sure that we expand those opportunities? Economic revitalization and neglected economic corridors. You know, we have so many opportunities in these nooks and crannies of our different districts to really breathe some life into it, right? But how do we prepare ourselves to look beyond just the easy, low-hanging fruit and peel that back to say, okay, you know, I know from my district alone, I have 5 economic corridors that I really want to try to breathe some life into. So, and I'm sure others have the same. And finally, as we start laying down new asphalt, how do you not only pave roads, but redesign them to make sure that they're working for all of the communities, right? It's easy to lay down asphalt and keep going, but how do we take the time to say, is this road working? And this is probably the best time to evaluate any changes that need to be made. So,
Cool, thank you.
so
Councilman?
I can't believe that you went less time than me. Just wait till we get to
Start a
Dennis.
timer, yeah.
Dennis ain't been
How
in.
much time do we have, Mama?
We have until 3 o'clock, or
Well, we
maybe
gotta
3:10.
give time for everybody else.
But we can have another session, because we do need to make sure everybody has time.
Well, so the first item I've got listed, backyard chickens, urban chickens, however you want to,
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
you want to call it. I've actually got the legislation written out. I think most of you, I put it in the packet.
day one.
Day one, I wanted to make sure you had it. Look, it's more than just about chickens. It's about sustainability. It's about independence for our residents. I don't know how many of you saw it or not, but our Secretary of Agriculture said we are now importing eggs from Turkey.
No kidding.
That's just kind of beyond
Turkey eggs.
comprehension. We got turkey eggs. So I want us to be sustainable. I want us to wrap our arms around that. The second thing that I've been working on for a while now that I want to make these new council people aware of, there's a part of my district that does not have public water. They, the ones that live there are on wells, it's up on Raccoon Mountain in my district. Many of their wells are failing. I've got a 75-year-old man that has to go down to Johnny Patton. It's on a meter, but he fills up a water tank in his truck, and he has to haul it back to his property, a couple of times a week. 75 years old. There's another gentleman up there. His well has failed. He's got 5 kids that he's trying to haul water to his residents. Our new chief of staff has been working on this with me. We've worked out some agreements with TVA. We're doing a NEPA study right now. My hope is that once this NEPA study is complete, that we could get the funding to be able to lay this water line for these residents up here. it's also a life safety issue. The fire department can carry enough water up there to do a search and rescue, but not enough to save a structure. So it is, it's really a life safety issue as well. So I know when it comes around to budget time, this would be something that we would see in a capital budget. Talking about the collaboration, working together, I may need some help from all of y'all to make sure that funding gets appropriated. And this is a critical need in the district. Effective homeless strategy, I would say the number one issue that I had when we was out knocking on doors was our homeless issues that we have in the city of Chattanooga. It's kind of a twofold from the residents, but also from those individuals that are homeless. And I think, it's something that, the mayor came to one of our neighborhood association meetings and said, if it was easy, we would have done it a long time ago. It's not easy, I get it. It's something that I'm not sure that any of us have the answer, but maybe all of us have the answer. And then the fourth thing that I've got on my list is citywide homestay for short-term vacation rentals. Short-term vacation rentals is something I've tried to carry the water on from the very beginning. Like I said, we tweaked it. We've made some modifications to it. Part of what remained in the kind of the old ordinance was we kept homestays in an overlay, and I have several requests all the time for expanding that overlay so that other people can do homestays. And I will say this, I've not ever, to my knowledge, on this council had a problem or somebody's expressed a problem coming from the homestays. It was always the absentees. I forget what we renamed it, but I think that's something that, again, this kind of goes back to sustainability and independence. This enables a lot of our residents to create a little bit of extra income by renting out a bedroom or renting out a basement that they have, and that's something I'd really like to see us expand the homestays to citywide.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Davis.
Yeah, so I'll just hit the top two on my list in the interest of time, and they're at the top for a reason. So again, homelessness, but in particular, I think creating a low or no barrier homeless shelter. If we can build a baseball stadium, I think we can do that. I think we should do that. So that's very important to me. And folks in Hickson, you may not think of Hickson as a magnet for homelessness, but we have quite a few camps out there affecting private landowners, especially small business owners and others around the community. So, and then just ensuring that we prioritize any, I guess through the budget process, funding requests that come to us from community groups that serve children and families in particular. That's the work I do on a daily basis, and that's where my heart is in particular. So yeah, those two would be my top two priorities.
Thank you. All right, Councilman Clark.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hill. I'll try to highlight a couple, but I think at the core of what we ask for as we represent our prospective districts is make sure we have equitable distribution of resources across all districts. And as Councilman Davis mentioned, that, when we look at capital budgets or capital projects and requests, we have to, I would like for us to make sure that there's citywide things that we all benefit from, but then there's some things that are overdue in some districts where we have been underserved. And in my district, in District 5, there are economic development projects along Highway 58 that have gone unmet, from previous council peoples, all going back all the way to Russell Gilbert. And so I'd love to see some economic development incentives happening for Highway 58. People are specifically asking for a sit-down restaurant. We're tired of going to Hickson to sit down and eat, or to East Brainerd.
We're tired of the traffic.
You trying to? So yeah, so there you go. So help us,
Good
and I know the
answer.
administration is helping. Thanks, Jeff. You threw me off because he very seldom speaks, but I'm like, he's right. Stay focused, stay focused.
Sneak up on you.
Sneak up on you, yeah. It's a sneak attack. Always the quiet ones.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, so to close that gap where we have an opportunity to put some investment in areas that have not gotten it. Now, that doesn't mean we take away from investments from other areas that we all benefit from, because I know Councilwoman Dotley has a central business district in her district, and we're doing a lot of investment into that area, but I think we can find ways to balance resources to some underserved areas. So that's specifically Highway 58 economic development for retail dining with growth along Highway 58. And then last but not least, for District 5 in particular, we like to see some reemergence of some food equity and food access. I don't like to use the word desert. I think we have a lot of grocery store options that we can travel to, but not as convenient as some of my other colleagues in the East Brainerd, downtown, or Hickson area. So we like to see the redevelopment of grocery options back into that district that also benefits District 8 and 9, who I believe they are in a desert, in 8 and 9. 5 has access issues, they're in a desert. So I'd like to kind of let 5 be the economic heart, because we're kind of in the center of the city, to kind of be a driver of making sure that if you live on Highway 58, or if you live in Woodmore or Tunnel Boulevard, that your access to city services, you feel like we're getting our fair share. So as we talk about budgeting and capital projects, let's keep that in mind. And in some of our requests is not to take away from anywhere else, but to close that equity gap. I know they're trying to get us to come away from that word, but it's a real thing, right? So that's really it for me, other than infrastructure improvements. One specific legislative item that I'll be bringing up that's not on here is how we park on our city roads. We've talked about that in particular. I think that's more of a technical thing. And how we're parking in cul-de-sacs, how we're parking on the wrong side of the roads. There's not a lot of enforcement in how we allow emergency vehicles to access these roads. People are using our roads as their garages and driveways. So we need to reform that code to be more in line with what they're doing in other cities, and East Ridge has already done it. So that's not related to District 5, but one I think you'll, citywide. And then there's also community centers. You know, we have a fee right now where we're charging people $100 per hour, and I think Councilwoman Marvine and I are working on a collaborative issue for a youth group that wants to use East Chattanooga, but they can't afford the $100 fee per hour, which is one of the highest fees that we've set in the city. It's cheaper for me to use the Champions Club in your district, I think, than it is for me to rent out a gym in an underserved community. And I know that was a fee that y'all set in the last council, but now we're getting complaints about it. So anyway, so those are specific legislative items I like to put on y'all's radar in addition to some council priorities for District 5.
If we get it wrong, we'll fix it.
We'll fix it, yeah. Anyway.
Councilman Dotley.
I have quite a few, so I'm just gonna run through all of them. I have a specific one to District 7 is Amplified Music District, because we have so many music venues and so many great posh things happening in District 7. We need to be able to rein that in. Be able to rein that in a little bit. So I'm actually working with Chris Anderson on that now. So we are mapping that out, and hopefully be bringing that to our legislative committee chair soon. In addition to that, when we think about even this budget season and any budget season moving forward, there's always, we rarely ever do an inflation adjustment for anything. Then we come around every 4 years and ask for these big dollars because we never got in and actually tackled it year by year. It's like our own personal budget. You know, if I know I want something, I'm gonna save a little out of every check until I can get it. Instead of just waiting and just hoping I can have it, you know, at the end of the month. And so looking at our budget from that perspective, I'm looking at Carter, a potential inflation adjustment, and then looking at our budget a little tighter, kind of echoing what Councilman Harvey was saying, you know, how can we be more fiscally responsible for that? And there are some policies that our finance team has already worked on. I don't know if you all received them, but they'll be coming out and you're gonna have a hot committee, Madam Vice Chair. So that'll be coming.
I welcome that smoke.
That's right. Oh, okay. Beautification, yeah, beautification and trash mitigation. I've been working with one of my constituents, and we put together a really good package. So now we just need to look at it. We're looking at it from a legislative standpoint, as far as how can we mitigate, some of this trash, or what enforcement measures do we need, things like that. So we'll be looking at that. And then city park preservation is another one. It's within our One Chattanooga plan. It's just one of those things that's in there. But as we're developing and building out, especially in areas, hot development areas, we want to make sure that we preserve those spaces and amenities for our community. So that, land development office, land development ordinance and policy, and legislative updates, because I found that even though we want to make sure that we're doing responsible development, but we have to be efficient on our side as a city. And a lot of times, and not to knock anybody in LDO, because they do a good job and it's a lot of hard work, but a lot of times we've been finding ourselves losing development opportunities because of how long it takes to get a permit, or how long it takes to do different things. And so being able to work with the administration on some updates and policies so that we can move that forward. And I mentioned the budget reform, so those are mine.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Byrd.
Hard to follow these acts. I really, everything that I put down goes along with everything everybody else has said, and it's infrastructure, more global topics of infrastructure priorities and funding, continuing to focus on safe neighborhoods. And when I talk about safe neighborhoods, it has to do with traffic, it has to do with policing, with code enforcement. And then several people have mentioned, which I ditto, is the balanced distribution of economic opportunities citywide. So making sure that our outlying areas are getting some opportunities as well. And then improving our constituent access to city and council information and engagement. And I think to tack on to, I think something Cody said, or it could be something, well, everybody said, is maybe making sure that constituents are educated on the issues and figuring out what more do we need to do. And I think it goes along with what you were saying, something we were saying up here about legislation is when we are proposing legislation, and I know this body already does that, but just again, making sure that as much education as possible. People may not like the legislation, but I think if they understand it and they're educated on it, then they'll be more willing to support it. Or go along with it. Maybe not support it, but understanding goes a long way.
Cool. Vice Chairwoman.
Okay, so you all have touched on everything that really affects the great District 8.
Yeah.
And I mean, all of it. Started off with coding and ending here all the way down the line. So I will just give you a quick little thing here. Main thing for District 8 is, and when I was on the campaign trail, it was about public safety. It was about programs for our youth. It was about making sure they have what is needed. It was about having camps available for them even when they're out of school, doing sessions, different winter, spring, summer, fall session, whatever they are. So my main thing is just to continue to successfully invest for our public safety by expanding whatever resources we have to help keep that under control. It's pretty much under control in a good portion of District 8 right now. And that's due, and I have to give kudos to Community Haven Patrol that has come in there and made a major difference in that area for us. And then, of course, the food desert, the knee is on the neck with us in District 8. We have nothing. We absolutely have nothing now. I'm fortunate enough to have a vehicle. I can go in and buy any district in here and get my groceries. But everybody does not have that that luxury to be able to do that. And so those are things that I really, really need. And District 8 has been behind the 8 ball for a very long time. So we need to try to get District 8 a little further down that field. So we can make things better for them. So it's the public safety, it's the youth, it's the lack of available food. We do have food, but it's not what's I mean, it's adding to our health issues. It's adding to the you know, the high sodium, the high sugar, adding on all the processed food, canned food, a lot. And a prime example, I don't ever eat canned soup. Not ever. When I tell you I never eat it, I never. I always make my soup. So I decided I was going to purchase me 2 cans of Progressive chicken noodle soup. And I ate it. One day I had of it, and then next day I ate it again, and then all of a sudden my head just started hurting and hurting and hurting. And I thought, dog, I don't have headaches. So what is really going on? So I thought, I don't take blood pressure medicine, but let me just check my pressure. I got out an old blood pressure machine. I thought, oh Lord, I hope it's still good. So I put it on and I check it, and I looked at that number and I said, this machine is probably so old, it's not right. But let me wait a minute, check it again. I check it again, and it had gone up a little more, and I was like, oh no, okay. So at this point, I was trying to keep myself calm. Don't get it's gonna make it go up if you don't. So I said, I'm a little dizzy, I can't drive. So what am I gonna do? I'm down the street from the hospital. Let me check it. So then it hit me. You can get in your car and set it, and it'll take you there. So I thought, okay, so it took me there. My car took me there. I got out and went in, and I told the nurse, I said, I just need you to check my blood pressure. If you can do that for me, I'll be great. I had written mine down, and I said, I don't want to tell you what my machine said, but I want you to tell me what you get. And she did, and she turned around and looked at me, and she said, did you get 242 over 195? And I said, yes, I did. She said, who? She said, are you short of breath? I said, no. She said, are you have any chest pains? I said, no. And she said, what happened? I said, I don't know. I said, are you on medication? I said, no. Well, they gave me some medicine, an IV, brought it down really quickly. So I said all that to say this. The processed food is killing us. In that soup in that can almost took me out.
Took you to glory.
I mean, it did. I pray God I made the glory. We pray. But we as, you don't like to say underserved areas, but we're dragging the ground, is the way I'm going to put it. We really are. So we need help in that area, which I really thought I had a father and son that was going to come and on 23rd Street at the old Food City and be our knight in shining armor, our ram in the thicket like it is here, but not going to happen. Not going to happen. It was supposed to be commercial on the bottom, 260 units on top, and bring in a little small grocery store. We don't have to have anything large, but they're saying money-wise they couldn't make it work. It's just difficult to do. But it is my nightly prayer and my morning prayer, and during the day, that the Lord will provide District 8 with a grocery store, someplace where our people can have what they need. So we're digging our own graves with our teeth. Is what we're doing when we eat what we eat. Yeah. So anyway.
Thank you very much.
But thank you.
I am thrilled that a lot of the things that are on my to-do list are on y'all's to-do list. So the things that are citywide that I'd love to be working on in the next 46 months, traffic safety enforcement, especially speeding. I've been learning about that with Chief Chambers, how we can keep our roads safer and enforce what we have, and it may require some assistance all the way up the food chain to Nashville, so that could be a long-term project. The general fund budget policies and reserve policies that Councilwoman Dotley mentioned, shoring up those and making sure we're really setting a strong foundation for future leadership. Code enforcement for difficult cases. As you were talking, Cody, I wanted to say welcome to council. Jenny, your mom would talk about enforcement. I mean, we have talked about code enforcement so much, haven't we? And so been bringing together some folks from the city, all different departments, for something called Operation Better Neighbor, and we've made a little bit of headway, but there's a lot more work there to do that I think would really benefit from input from all districts. You all talked about infrastructure, and I think I'd really like us to dig into how to set up a recurring funding source for infrastructure and maintenance of infrastructure, be that park maintenance, be that road maintenance. You know, always pulling direct out of the general fund, it's just shrinking, and roads are not shrinking. So something to consider, and RPA has brought us some ideas there that's just going to take some real digging in. And I'm learning more and more about this concept of strong towns. I bring it up periodically, but that's something I want to learn more about as it relates to how we fund infrastructure overall and maintain it well. And then finally, implementing practical changes to land development ordinances and policies to make building homes less expensive. And I think Councilwoman Dotley, you talked about, you know, time kills deals. Speed is an issue, and when we think about trying to build something that's trying to meet some type of accessibility or affordability standard, it's just that much harder. And what small bureaucratic changes can we make to put? Sorry, I didn't mean to have these on while I was talking. To put affordable projects at the front of the line for an inspection, you know, or something that if it's the grocery store project and it aligns with a priority that we have, can't they get their inspection at 7 a.m.? You know what I mean? That's so some things like that. We are at 2:58. Can we all give ourselves a high five? Yes. Good job, everybody. We covered a lot. Are there any, before we wrap up, everybody, thank you for sharing. I know I've taken a lot of notes. What stood out to you as some overlap? Where's the Venn diagram? And are there things that you said, I want to work on that. I'd love to be part of that conversation. Anybody, anything?
I'd love to have a chicken coop in my backyard. I mean, you know.
I'm pulling for you, buddy.
Well,
So something to be thinking about is as we pull these notes together and find those points of overlap, are there items that you want to be a champion for? I'm not trying to take anything off anybody's plate, but more might we, and I got this idea from Councilman Elliott, might we, so for example, recurring funding source for infrastructure or infrastructure investment, that was a bucket that we said we want to be working on this. Might there be someone who says, I'd like to be leading the legislative research, or I want to serve on that?
I'll take that one.
Okay. And then to say, well, I want to work with Ron on that, you know, and have some small working groups that can move those things along and work with the committee chairs to do those things. So if there is something that you're like, oh, I want to be on that, just shoot me an email. But otherwise, we'll compile all this and we'll talk about it again next strategic planning, so everybody will have it all at the same time. And also, just so you know, at our next strategic planning, we do have some legislation that's been in the hopper that some folks have been working on. Councilman Henderson's chicken ordinance. Councilman Elliott has a position he'd like the council to consider, and I'll be bringing that, the stair ordinance, and Councilwoman Dotley has some great budget stuff. So we're going to get to start digging in deep soon. And I thank you for bringing an open mind to this, and cordiality to this meeting. We will resume our conversations at 3:30 in the chambers. Thank you, guys.